They say a man who chases two rabbits catches none. But what happens when a king chases 10? This is the story of King Adaeze of the Okafo Kingdom. A man rich in love but poor in wisdom. And by the time he understood his mistake, it was already too late. In the heart of the ancient Okafo Kingdom, nestled between rolling green hills and a river that never ran dry, there lived a king unlike any other. King Adaeze was tall, broad-shouldered, and generous to a fault. His people loved him, his warriors respected him, and the women adored him. By the time he was 40 years old, King Adaeze had taken 8 wives, each one beautiful, each one chosen for a reason. His first wife, Ngozi, was the daughter of a neighboring chief, a political marriage that brought peace between two kingdoms. His second wife, Amarachi, was a healer who the king fell deeply in love with after she nursed him back to health from a terrible fever. The others came one by one, some for love, some for alliance, some simply because the king could not say no. And for a while, life was good. The palace was full with laughter. Children ran through every corridor. The king's compound was the most lively place in the entire kingdom. Feasts were held every new moon. Drummers played, women danced, and King Adaeze sat on his throne smiling, believing he was the most blessed man alive. But kingdoms are not built on love alone. As the years passed, the king's treasury began to thin. 8 wives meant 8 households. 8 households meant 8 sets of children, and King Adaeze had fathered 22 children in total. 22 mouths to feed, 22 futures to secure. The farms that once produced in abundance began to struggle after 2 seasons of poor rain. The trade route that brought gold and palm oil to the kingdom were disrupted by a conflict in the east. And the king, proud as he was, refused to admit that he was struggling. Instead of cutting back, he kept spending. Instead of seeking counsel, he kept smiling at feasts. And behind closed doors, the wives began to notice. Ngozi, the first wife, noticed that her children's new robes never came. She had been promised a celebration for her eldest son's coming of age. It was quietly forgotten. Amarachi, the second wife, watched as the food portions sent to her kitchen grew smaller each week. She said nothing at first, but she was watching. The younger wives, the ones who had come into the palace expecting luxury, began to whisper amongst themselves. Who was the king spending money on? Surely he was favoring everyone. Surely one of them was secretly getting more. And that is where the real trouble began. Not with poverty, but with suspicion. When there is not enough, people stop trusting each other. The wives stopped greeting one another in the corridors. Side glances replaced smiles. Whisper replaced laughter. Adenna, the fifth wife, accused Ngozi of hiding food in her quarters. Ngozi denied it furiously, and from that day, they refused to speak. The sixth wife, Chisom, began sending her eldest daughter to spy on the king's movement, checking which wife's door he entered at night, calculating if one wife was receiving more of his time and therefore more of his favor. The children, once playmates, began to take sides. Fist fight broke out between brothers. Sisters pulled each other's hair in the courtyard. The palace that had once overflowed with joy now burst with tension like a beehive about to burst. King Adaeze would walk through his own compound and feel like a stranger. He had built this family. He had loved every one of these women, and now they look at him with cold, calculating eyes. Each one wondering the same thing. When things fall apart, will he choose me? One evening, during what was supposed to be a family dinner, a tradition the king had started to keep unity, everything collapsed. Adenna stood up in front of everyone and declared that Ngozi had been stealing from the communal food store. Ngozi stood up and called Adenna a jealous, lying woman who had never deserved the king's attention. Within seconds, every wife had something to say. Decades of swallowed bitterness poured out all at once. King Adaeze stood up and shouted for silence. Nobody listened. For the first time in his life, the king, ruler of an entire kingdom, had no power in his own home. He walked out of the dining hall alone, sat beneath the old iroko tree in the courtyard and wept. Not because he was weak, but because he finally understood he had gathered these women under one roof, made promises to all of them, and when the time came to keep those promises, he had failed every single one. The elders of the kingdom were eventually called in to mediate. It took 3 months of painful conversations, negotiations, and hard decisions. Some wives chose to return to their families. Others stayed but lived separately. The king's compound was divided and the laughter never fully returned. King Adaeze ruled for 11 more years. He was still respected, still a fair king to his people, but those who knew him closely said that he carried a quiet sadness in his eyes until his final day. Before he died, he called his sons together and said these words: "A man must know the size of his hands before he tries to carry the world. Love is not wrong, but love without wisdom is a fire without walls. It will warm you for a moment and then burn everything down." And so ends the tale of King Adaeze of the Okafo Kingdom, a king who had everything and lost it, not to an enemy, not to the war, but to the weight of promises he could not keep. If the story touched you, share it with someone who needs to. Subscribe to Zilla Folktales, where every story carries a lesson, and we will see you in the next tale.